Today, we are having Professor Manish Sinha with us to deliver a talk on the topic Interpreting Indian Nationalism in the Context of the Dual Membership of the Congress and Hindu Mahasabha. The speaker is from Magadh University, Bodh, Gaya, with 25 years of teaching experience. He is a member of various academic bodies like the Indian History Congress, Indian Institute of Public Administration, and the Indian Society of Buddhist Studies. He is also associated with the Indian National Trust for Cultural Heritage as convener of the Gaya chapter. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much. I hope I am quite audible to you all. Is my voice clear?
Yes,
Am I?
sir.
Okay. Good morning to all. First of all, I should express my thanks to Dr. Arjumon, Head of Department of History, University of Kerala, all the faculty members, the departments. I greet all those who have joined, the faculty members, the students. So warm greetings to you all, and lot of thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak before you on a topic. Hello. I am audible, na? When my voice is not clear, just let me know. Okay. So, look, I shall be speaking on the topic interpreting Indian nationalism in the context of the dual membership of the Congress and the Hindu Mahasabha. So, first of all, let me tell you that a dual membership between the Congress and the Hindu Mahasabha existed till 1938. And it was only in 1938 when Subhash Chandra Bose was the president that the resolution was passed by the Indian National Congress that no member of the Hindu Mahasabha or the Muslim League could become an office bearer of the Congress. Now, let me just what I argue is that Indian nationalism, as it was shaped during the anti-colonial struggle, was a very dynamic, conflicted, and complex process. And it cannot just be understood in very compartmentalized and overdetermined binaries and historical narratives. Because in this dynamic process of Indian nationalism, there were many protagonists who were having multiple affiliations, associations, and loyalties. And there were inherent contradictions also. There were sensibilities also. So what I premise is that without understanding in totality all these aspects, we do not get a clear picture of Indian nationalism. And that is why unless and until we, as historians, our job is to reveal. Our job is not to conceal, isn't it? So unless and until we understand those dynamics, then it gives us a better grasp on the dynamics of Indian nationalism and the problems which face in nation building today. So, look, here I will be citing a personality, and his story very much conforms to what I'm speaking about. Like, the name of this personality is Jagat Narayan Lal. Now, he epitomizes this dual membership. He was a very prominent leader of the Indian National Congress from Bihar, and he was also associated with the Hindu Mahasabha in various capacities, at least till 1937, when he fights the provincial elections on the Congress ticket. Okay. Now, there is a personal, connect with him also. My connect with him, which I will be telling you later on. He was my maternal grandfather. But anyway, that is besides the point. So Jagat Narayan Lal was also member of the Constituent Assembly. He was also the member of the DAR Commission, the Linguistic States Reorganization Commission, which was appointed by the Constituent Assembly to look into the matter of reorganization of states like Madras, central provinces, Maharashtra, and ultimately out of Madras, you know that your state, Kerala, Karnataka, and Andhra, they were created. So he was a conflicted personality, isn't it? And he was an educationist. He had an aesthetic leaning also. His biography, he wrote a biography, Light into the Cell, which got published in 1946. I have recently edited it. That was written when he was first imprisoned in the Buxar jail in 1921 during the non-cooperation movement. So I'll be taking you and a lot of contributions in the Constituent Assembly. So I will, for example, to show you the journey as the Indian nationalism took, and I will try to explain that Indian nationalism cannot be just understood within two binaries or within strictly, strict historical narratives. So we need to widen our scope a little further. Now, let me speak something about the Hindu Mahasabha. Look, the Hindu Mahasabha was founded in 1915 at Haridwar during the Kumbh Mela, and its first secretary was Pandit Dev Ratna Mishra. And thereafter, the most important session which occurred after it was in my town, Gaya, 1922 session, which was presided by Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya. So I'll be talking about it. Now let me just explain that ideologically the Hindu Mahasabha is in conflict with the all-inclusive nationalism of the Indian National Congress. Because Hindu Mahasabha represented the idea of a homogeneous, unified Hindu nation on the idea that the spirit of India was Hindu. But this becomes more, more determined after Savarkar assumes the president, becomes the president of Hindu Mahasabha in 1937. Now, when we talk about the early 20th century, I am talking about the decade, the years between 1922 till 1937, where I will be talking about the association of Jagat Narayan Lal when he finally quits the Hindu Mahasabha in 1937. He fights the election of the Congress ticket. So, in the early 20th century, the Mahasabha's political distinction from the Congress had been very vague, as both the organizations were not seen as antagonistic to each other at their social basis in the localities. There were many prominent leaders of the Congress and the Hindu Mahasabha who were both members of both the parties. For example, at the Gaya Congress in 1922, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, our first president, he was the chairman of the reception committee. And then when the Banaras Hindu Mahasabha session was held in 1923, which was again presided by Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya, Rajendra Prasad played a very important role, and he was a member of the executive committee. In fact, I will tell you that at the Banaras session, people like Pandit Motilal Nehru, Jawaharlal Nehru's father, so he was also there, Chitra, and a number of other people. In fact, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, in his autobiography, which he wrote in 1946, he writes about this episode when he became the chairman of the reception committee. He says that at that point of time, Hindu Mahasabha was not the hardly organized or the communal body as it is being perceived today. And its policy was not also necessarily anti-Congress. And then he says that the Khilafat Congress was also always held along with the Hindu Mahasabha session. So it was difficult to refuse the request of the Hindu Mahasabha to hold a session along with the Congress. One thing more I would like to tell you is that during these years, the Hindu Mahasabha session or the Khilafat session or other parties, they also used to hold their sessions along with the Indian National Congress, maybe at the same pandal, at the same venue, during the same period. Okay. So it was not, there was an ambiguous relationship during this period between the Congress and the Hindu Mahasabha. It was not thought of that they are completely separate because their leaders were straddling both the parties. And as you know that as Indian nationalism emerged, so somewhere along the line, the Hindu nationalism was also overlapping or it was also in some ways connecting with the Indian nationalism, isn't it? So I was talking about the Banaras session of the Hindu Mahasabha. So it was attended by Rajendra Prasad, Pandit Jawaharlal, even Jawaharlal Nehru attended. Pandit Motilal Nehru was there. Purushottam Das Tandon was there. Ghanshyam Das Birla was there. And in 1924, Madan Mohan Malviya again presides over the Mahasabha session. It was again held with the Congress session at Belgaum. Now it was attended by Mahatma Gandhi, Muhammad and Shaukat Ali, and Motilal Nehru also. But there are different phases you will have to understand. One thing which I also premise that what we do is that we think that ideology is something which is rigid. It is not like that. Ideology is flexible. Ideology changes with the circumstances. And there are different phases of ideologies even in a person, in an organization also. Now, when we talk about the Hindu Mahasabha, now in the early years, at least till, before the civil disobedience, we see that it was controlled by the moderate faction. Now this moderate faction was represented by Madan Mohan Malviya, Lala Lajpat Rai, isn't it? Maybe Kelkar, okay, Jaikar, etc. Now, these people, Jagat Rai Lal's mentors were Dr. Rajendra Prasad, Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya, Lala Lajpat Rai. In 1926, there was a special session of the Hindu Mahasabha at Guwahati, and he was with Lala Lajpat Rai for about 1 month. Now, these people felt that they were sympathetic to the Indian National Congress, and they were of the view that Congress is the most important organization and the sole organization which is powerful enough to wage the anti-colonial struggle. And as far as the Hindu Mahasabha is concerned, the Hindu Mahasabha should be a forum for expressing the problems of the Hindu community, like the constructive work, Achutodwar Sangathan, etc. And Lala Lajpat Rai was the president of Hindu Mahasabha in 1925-26. Now he exhorted the Hindus not to give up the Congress, which had to be supported in the anti-colonial struggle. But later on, as we move towards 1929's early 30s, so we see that the Hindu Mahasabha is taken over by the hardliners, like Dr. B.S. Monje, the member of Hegdewar, Bhai Parmanand, Raja Narendra Dev, etc. And they started treating these leaders, even Jagat Narayan Lal, as more in the pocket of the Congress, and they captured the Mahasabha organization. Now, I have just given you an introduction. Now, what I'm going to do is that I will now traverse this journey of the Hindu Mahasabha and the Congress through the story of Jagat Narayan Lal, who is associated with the Hindu Mahasabha also very much. Who is associated with the Hindu Mahasabha also, and he is also a very prominent member of the Indian National Congress also, isn't it? So, just excuse me. Please excuse me, I will have to switch off my phone. Some calls are coming. Just give me a minute. But if I switch, how do I switch it off? Okay. Are you able to hear me? Hello?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
I am audible. Na? Now, let me just introduce you to Jagat Narayan Lal. So, he was a lawyer by profession. He was educated at Christian Ewing College and Allahabad University. And he did his master's in law as well as in economics. And then thereafter during his student days at Allahabad, there was fundraising for Banaras Hindu University. So as a student, as a very dynamic student leader also, he raised funds for it. And when in 1916, the BHU was formally inaugurated, so Madan Mohan Malviya ji also called him to the stage, and he writes in his private, his His sources are his private papers. He was a prolific writer. So his private papers collections are Jagatnalal papers at Nehru Memorial and Museum Library. And there are some family records also. And his autobiography is Light Unto a Cell, which has been edited by me. It is on the Amazon also. So he was very thrilled. He notes in his and he spent about 8 years in the prison during the freedom movement. Okay, so he notes that he was very thrilled when he was called on the stage, shoulder to shoulder with stalwarts like Motilal Nehru, Sarojini Naidu, etc. So uh, he was also one of the founding members when the non-cooperation movement started. So he plunged headlong into the non-cooperation movement and left his practice and and he left his practice and he started practicing in the Patna High Court. And it was at this point of time that he was he became one of the founding members of the Bihar National College and the Bihar Vidyapeeth. As you all know, that a scheme of alternative education was to be established. So he was one of the founding. Rajendra Prasad wrote a letter to him that you look for a building. So a building was selected, and he was appointed as a professor of economics. Okay, Rajendra Prasad was the principal, and there were several other people. And later on, when Bihar Vidyapeeth or the university was opened at Sadakat Ashram, and Majrul Haq, he gave the Sada. It was he who gave the Sadakat. Sadakat Ashram became the headquarters of the Indian National Congress. So there Bihar Vidyapeeth was founded, and there also he was teaching economics. So later on, when he will become member of the Constituent Assembly, or he becomes the Minister of Labor and Industries, the state minister in the provincial government in Bihar, so his training as an economist, that will come very much handy. I will be talking about it. Now, his first term starts in December 1921. The Prince of Wales was to visit Patna on 23 to 25 December. So he had become the assistant secretary of the Pradesh Congress Committee, and he was also the secretary of the Patna Congress Committee. So the Congress Committee decided to boycott the visit of the Prince of Wales. So they did hartals and dharnas and all those things. So he was arrested, and he was sent to Buxar jail. And it was at Buxar jail from December 1921 till July 1922 that he was there, where he also had to serve solitary confinement of 2 months, where he wrote his autobiography. And it was on his experiences. He had some, spiritual experiences also. But Light Unto a Cell, his autobiography, is a very important political document of the period, as he witnessed it. He talks about it till 1940s. So I will tell you something that what he says about his jail experience. He says the first thrill of the jail roti and eating it in the jail thali, it gave me such a thrill, and my taste buds even today remember that that exemplary taste. Then he remembers 1921. Now he says from his diaries, I have noted it down, that what a glorious year 1921 was, and the spiritual nectar oozing from Mahatma Gandhi's heart, it permeated the whole expanse of India. Now Brahmins and Chandals, Hindus and Muslims, forgetting their centuries-old contradictions and animosities, they were embracing them, and the whole of India was in a spiritual embrace. So that is what he tells about. So this is 1921, and he's remembering it. Now he gets a solitary confinement also, but I am not going to talk about. He's released in July 1922. Okay. Now, when he's released in July 1922, so he again plunges into the national movement. Now, national movement has witnessed several episodes during this phase, some of which were communal episodes also, we can say, or you can interpret it any way you like. Now, what I will be talking about is the riots in the aftermath during the non-cooperation. I will be talking about the Mopla riots in Malabar. Okay. Now, Jagat Narayan Lal became immediately involved. Gaya Congress was to be held in December 1922 at Gaya. Okay, and the Gaya Congress is very important because it was here that Congress was divided and Swaraj Party was born. Okay, Motilal Nehru was the secretary of Gaya Congress and Deshbandhu Chitranjan Das was the president, as you all must be knowing. So Jagat Narayan Lal, as one of the assistant secretaries of the Pradesh Congress Committee, he plays a very important role. But let me tell you that side by side with the Gaya Congress, the Hindu Mahasabha session was also held at Gaya. And he was also one of the main figures in the organization of the Hindu Mahasabha session. Okay. Now, let me give you a little background of this Hindu Mahasabha session. This Hindu Mahasabha session was prompted by the Sankaracharya of Puri. He was visiting Sonpur. There is a place about 100 kilometers from Patna, which is on the confluence of two rivers, the river Gandak and the Ganges. And there a very big fair is held, which is known as the Sonpur Mela. So in November, it used to be held on the day of Kartik Purnima. So Jagat Rai Lal had been also the secretary of Bihar Seva Samiti since 1919. So he used to do social work there. So when he was doing social work there, and he had met Shankaracharya, had come to Patna before, and on his way to Harihar Kshetra Mela, at Harihar Kshetra Mela, an All India Go Seva Mahamandal conference was to be inaugurated by the Shankaracharya. Okay. So Jagat Rai Lal with his volunteers used to do social service there. He was also there. And he was called by Shankaracharya to his camp. Shankaracharya said, look, Go Raksha is a very important issue along with Swaraj. Of course, Swaraj is a very important issue. So at this place also, he talked about that cow killing used to happen. So we organized a Hartal, we organized a Satyagraha whereby it was stopped. So he said, look, unless and until we get Swaraj and you just observe as there is a change in Jagat Narayan Lal's ideology. Okay. I will be talking about his ideologies, sensibilities, sensitivities, and it is not only true of Jagat Narayan, there were many other people. I am documenting one case which will give you a better understanding of the Indian nationalism. Now Jagat Narayan said, look, unless and until you get Swaraj and the Hindus are organized, cow protection cannot be there. Then Shankaracharya said, look, I want that Hindu Mahasabha session be organized along with the Congress session during the Congress session in December 1922 at Gaya. And he said, I agree with you that there has to be Sangathan and I want the Hindu Mahasabha to be a representative body. And he said, I had tried, but it has not been a representative body and I want an All India session to be organized at Gaya. So this thing appealed to Jagat Narayan Lal. Then the Shankaracharya formed a 5-member committee and Jagat Narayan Lal also became one of the members. Okay. And another member was a person from Chhapra, Babu Madho Singh, a person from Chhapra was the secretary of that committee. Now, Shankaracharya of Puri was also famous as the Khilafati Shankaracharya. Because at Karachi, along with the Ali brothers, he had given a call he had also given a fatwa or something for the call of the Hindu soldiers to boycott the Indian army. But of course, he had been released on bail. He had been given a three-year sentence. So he was also famous as the Khilafati Shankaracharya. Shankaracharya from there, he had gone to Calcutta. From Calcutta, he had to come to Munger and from there he had to go to Gaya. But at Munger, he gave a speech on Dharmik Swaraj. And it was treated as seditious speech and he was arrested. Now, this committee became very perplexed. Shankaracharya is not there, how to organize. But they ultimately, they decided that we will organize it. And they requested Rajendra Prasad to become the member of the reception committee. Okay. And Rajendra Babu, he requested Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya, he sent a telegram that since you are also going to attend the Gaya Congress, so can you also be the president of the Hindu Mahasabha session? Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya agreed. Now, in his diaries, I will be telling you, I'm that Jagat Rao opened an office at Patna. He's a very active member of the Congress also. Okay, but he look, this is a dual membership. These are the contradictions, isn't it? He opens a office at Patna for the Hindu Mahasabha reception committee office, and he notes in his diaries that when we initially the Hindu members of the Congress, they were very much reluctant to become register themselves for membership for the Hindu Mahasabha session. But when Dr. Rajendra Prasad became the chairman of the reception committee, so this hesitation was gone. And he also notes that there was hesitation on the part of the Congress, Gaya Congress organizing committee to give space to the Hindu Mahasabha session. Whereas there used to be no such problems for giving space to the Khilafat committee. So he notes it in diaries, which is I am presenting before you. Now Gaya Congress was held, and it was Gaya. Gaya Congress is a very important Congress because it was here that the call for Hindu Sangathan was given. And Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya, in his speech, he talked about that true peace can be only there if Hindus, if both the communities are equally strong, so that nobody is in a position to carry out unjust acts against the other community. Madan Mohan Malviya. Okay, and then he says that there should be, and try to understand that this Gaya Congress is being organized and the backdrop of the Mopla incidents, the incidents at Kohat, the Multan riots, the Ajmer riots. So there was there were Hindu grievances that the community has been at the receiving end. So it was against this backdrop that the Gaya Congress was being organized. Then it was stated that just like the Congress committee, the Hindu Mahasabha should have its branches at the local levels. There should be a riot fund. So basically, it was about organization and Sangathan. And later in 1923, at Banaras, Madan Mohan Malviya relaunched the Hindu Mahasabha. Now, at Banaras session, Jagat Lal becomes the secretary of the Pradesh committee of the Hindu Mahasabha. He becomes the most important leader of the Hindu Mahasabha in Bihar. Okay. Now, I am taking this journey of the Congress and Hindu Mahasabha. I am talking along with his journey. I am telling his story also about of Jagat Lal. Now, after 1923, a very important issue occurred. That was the 1926 elections to the Imperial Legislative Council and the provincial councils. Now, Jagat Lal, as member of the Congress, he was given a ticket to fight the Legislative Assembly elections on the ticket of Congress. Now, at this point of time, the students of history must be knowing that several factions had emerged in the Congress. For example, Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya's Responsivist Cooperation Party, then Lala Lajpat Rai's Independent Congress Party, and Swaraj Party was also there. So Pandit Motilal Nehru, in September 1926, it was 1926, yes, he was at Delhi and a meeting of various factions in the Congress was called there, and several other, even Rajendra Prasad was at Delhi, but Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya was there. So this meeting had been convened by Madan Mohan Malviya, and an attempt was there that we should fight elections together. We have some ideological issues within the Congress, but we belong to the larger Congress fold. There may be issues on the Hindu-Muslim question and so on. Now, compromise could not be held, and Madan Mohan Malviya's the Responsivist Party also decides to fight the election, and Lala Lajpat Rai's Independent Congress Party also decides to fight the election as separate entities. Okay. In fact, Lala Lajpat Rai, who was the president of the Hindu Mahasabha in 1925-1926, he said that unity cannot be purchased at the cost of Hindu interests. Okay. Now, Jagat Lal was in a very big dilemma. Okay. What to do? He went to Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya and he asked him that I am in a very big dilemma, what to do. Shall I fight a ticket on the Congress? Shall I fight the elections on the Congress ticket, or shall I fight the ticket on some other party's interest, like your party or Lala Lajpat Rai's party? So look, at that point of time, in spite of the ideological differences, people like Madan Mohan Malviya Azad, they were very tall people. The ideological differences there are were there, of course, no denying. Madan Mohan Malviya said that look, on these delicate questions, one has to take one's own decision. This is the from Jagat Narayana Lal private papers. So you have to decide for yourself. So he said, I repeated this question again to him to ask him for some guidance at Delhi. But again, his answer was the same. Jagat Narayana Lal comes back to Patna. He refuses the Congress ticket. Okay. And he fights the election on the independent Congress party ticket of Lala Lajpat Rai. And he wins the election. He gets elected to the Legislative Assembly. And before that, there was a special session of the Hindu Mahasabha at Calcutta in 1925 December, where he became the General Secretary of the All India Hindu Mahasabha, and where Lala Lajpat Rai was elected as the President of the Hindu Mahasabha. And after that, in 26 March, Jagat Narayana Lal was with Lala Lajpat Rai for 1 month in Assam. They were touring Assam and Guwahati and several places. Now, what happens after it? Jagat Narayana Lal is straddling many associations and loyalties, many affinities. At heart, he is an ascetic, he is a social reformer, he is a reformer. His basic issues about the Hindu community is the reform within. But of course, he is very much disturbed also by the conversions which are taking place. The conversions which are taking place in Bihar, the Chota Nagpur area. And when he was in touring with Lala Lajpat Rai, the conversions which took place in Meghalaya, isn't it, in Shillong. So he writes about these things in his diaries. Okay. And another thing is that he is more towards Sangathan, more towards reform within the Hindu community. And at this point of time, he also gets associated with the Tarkeshwar Satyagraha. The Tarkeshwar Satyagraha was started in 1924. Tarkeshwar is a mutt in Bengal. Okay. And there was a spiritual leader, Swami Vishwananda from Bihar, who had waged a struggle against the corrupt Mahant of Tarkeshwar. Later on, Deshbandhu Chitranjan Das was also involved in it. So Swami Vishwananda requested Jagat Narayana Lal that you send some volunteers of the Hindu Mahasabha. Then at that point of time, 92, Rajendra Babu was also the executive committee member of Hindu Mahasabha. So he writes in his diaries that I took permission from him. Then he also goes to Tarkeshwar Satyagraha. And he writes in his diaries that these Mahants, they are totally corrupt and they are engaged in all types of immoral activities. And he uses the choicest of words from them. And but the British government, the government of the day, it was supporting the Mahant of Tarkeshwar. So this matter could not gather much headway, isn't it? And he notes that the upper caste Hindus, that support could not be garnered. Now he wants to replicate this the model of Tarkeshwar Satyagraha in Bihar also. Later on, he laments also that if the model of Tarkeshwar Satyagraha, which of course was a failure, if it could have been successfully implemented in Bihar, there would have a reform in the Hindu society, the temples and the mutts. So he moves a bill in the Bihar Legislative Assembly. The name of the bill is Bihar Temple Endowment Bill. Now he says that these mutts, these Mahants are very rich people. They should partake some of their money for the constructive work for the Hindu community, which they are not doing. And they are engaged in immoral activities also. So he was very active about it. A committee, what did the government do? The government formed a committee, of which Jagat Narayana Lal was also made a member. Questionnaires were published in newspapers. So basically, then he writes it was a plot by the government of the day, who did not want to antagonize the rich jamindars. These rich jamindars, they had a stake in the mutts, isn't it? And he talks about some of those people like Sir Ganesh Dutt Singh and many other people also who had a stake or who did not want um, do not want to antagonize the Mathadhishes, who were powerful leaders of their community. They were land owning. They generally belong to the land owning communities, isn't it? So he is very much pained. He said, "Ki I tried, but I would like to say that didn't get support from the Hindu Savarns also. At best, they remained neutral. And the government, it did not want to interfere. It wanted to have the support of the powerful jamindars. And most of these jamindars, like the feudal lords, they had a stake in the mutts and all those things. So later on, Govinda Mishra of the Hindu Mahasabha, he tried to push it through, but it was stalled. Even, the Hindu Mahasabha, I think in Madras also, there were some issues, but it remained neutral because it basically it was concerning the Brahmins and all those things and those categories. So this was one important aspect with which he was associated. Now let us move. It was during this period Jagat Rai Lal is editing a newspaper weekly whose name is Mahavir. Now in 1927, he writes a scathing article against Lord Irwin. There were very intensive Hindu-Muslim riots in Kanpur. And he says that, blames the British government, that at one stage Lord Irwin talks about communal amity, but all along the British bureaucrats and these high officials and the governor generals, so they are doing all which is possible to increase this animosity. Jagat Rai Lal was arrested. There is a very famous case against him, which is known as the Mahavir sedition case. You can search it on indianqanun.org. It is there, the sedition case. Now, for his sedition case, Pandit Motilal Nehru came to Patna. Sri Krishna Sinha, the first premier of Bihar provincial government in 1930, he was fighting this case. Chief Justice was some Mr. I think Ali. So he used some abusive words for Jagat Rai Lal, that silly little man. He was ultimately arrested and sent to Hazaribagh jail for 1 year. Okay, for seditious writing. So the paper which he used to edit, and then he was released in 1929. He was arrested. The case went on. He was arrested in 1928. He was released in 1929. So that is the important episode. In 29, now again, you will see that there is a dilemma, Congress Hindu Mahasabha. He goes to Lahore, Swaraj Adhiveshan. Okay. All these people, leaders from Bihar, they come back. He also comes back. Now there is a call by the Mahatma to resign from their seats. Jagat Rai Lal does not resign. So he is tremendously bashed up by the Congress leaders that he is an agent of the Hindu Mahasabha. So he is not resigning his legislative assembly seat. And he writes that I was not elected on the ticket of the Congress. So technically, I was not a member of the Congress at that point in time, although I had voted along with the Congress on each and every matter. And then he said that I was the prime member of the Hindu Temple Endowment Bill. So relinquishing my seat at this point in time would not have been judicious for the Hindu interests. Then he said, he writes in his autobiography, Light Unto a Cell, that I had decided that when the call will be given by the Mahatma Satyagraha, I will resign. So as soon as the call for Dandi came, he resigned from the Legislative Assembly, and near Patna he manufactures salt. Then he's again sentenced for 2 years during the civil war, and he's sent to Hazaribagh jail. Now at Hazaribagh jail, I came across a letter written by him to Dr. B.S. Munje. That letter was an unpublished letter. I got it from the family papers, as I have told you that Jagat Rai Lal was my own maternal grandfather. So this, on the basis of that letter, I wrote an article that was published in the Indian History Congress, The Dilemma of Jagat Rai Lal, Hindu Mahasabha of the Congress. It was at the 2015 session. You can log it in through JSTOR. Now he writes in that letter, he explains this dilemma to Dr. B.S. Munje. Now, Dr. B.S. Munjay, as you all know, he was the mentor of Dr. Hegdewar. For a number of terms, he was the president of the Hindu Mahasabha. And Jagat Lal was one of the mentors of the Jagat Lal was Dr. B.S. Munjay. Okay. Now, Dr. B.S. Munjay, the letter which Jagat Lal writes in March 1932 from Hazaribagh jail, it is in response to a letter Dr. B.S. Munjay has written to him. Dr. B.S. Munjay is saying that I want to make an organization whose name is Servants of uh, Hindu Society. Okay. And it will be modeled on Lala Rajpat Rai's Servant of India Society. So he says that I want to be a prominent office bearer of this organization. To this letter, Jagat Lal, before, now let me tell you one more thing. When he goes to the jail, he is bashed up by the hardliners in the Hindu Mahasabha like Bhai Parmanand, etc., that he is an agent of the Congress. And ethically and morally, he used to get a sum of rupees 100 from the Hindu Mahasabha as an office bearer. He stops taking it. Okay. He says, I have gone to the jail on the call of the Congress. Now let us come back to the Dr. B.S. Munjay's letter. So this dilemma is not only unique to Jagat Lal. Even Rajendra Babu had to defend himself in 1946 in his autobiography regarding his association. Now there is much to unfold. So he says, look, when I joined the Hindu Mahasabha 7 years ago, okay, 32 subtract, he's talking about 22, 23. She said it was not the organization which is it today. Now it opposes the Indian, it has become like another Muslim league, opposing the Congress on each and every question. Okay. Then he said a time might come where I will have to take a decision whether to remain in a party which is most dear to me, for which I have sacrificed so much, my near and dear ones. His wife had died, his elder son had died during his jail journeys. Okay. And he's talking about Indian National Congress. Or I might leave altogether as you have done. He's talking about Dr. B.S. Munjay. Then he says, whereas you are concerned, you are totally opposed to the Mahatma on each and every question. Regarding me, I'm in conformity with most of his issues and aspects, except the Hindu-Muslim question. So I might have to take a call because all this creates a great dilemma and pain. And then he says, look, I can join the Sanatan Hindu Sabha, Sanatan Hindu Samiti, Dr. B.S. Munjay was that. So he says, I can join it. But I want, my proposal is this, that keep it an apolitical body, which is engaged in constructive work, reform of the Hindu society, and leave its members free to do their political work in whatever party they want. And he says that most of the congressmen who are also sympathetic to the Hindu interest, they are also of this point of view. And then you will get support. To leave the politics. So there is a feeling, what is this dilemma? This dilemma is that the party which can lead the anti-colonial struggle is the Indian National Congress. There is no party which is capable of doing it. So Swaraj, anti-colonial Swaraj is a goal, isn't it? And these people like Jagat Lal, people like even Rajendra Prasad in his days, they also have Hindu sensibilities. They have also got the interest of the Hindu community. So how can this be done? So he suggests a formula that you separate the political part, don't make it a political body. After his release from jail, he joins the Sanatan Hindu Sabha of Dr. B.S. Munjay. But then again, what happens is that the hardliners have taken over the Hindu Mahasabha, like Dr. Bhai Parmanand, Raja Narendra Dev, these people. And Dr. B.S. Munjay is also there. So Jagat Lal is severely bashed up in the Punjab press as the agent of the Congress. And again, he writes a letter to Dr. B.S. Munjay in 1934. And in 1932 also, in that letter, he writes that Bhai Parmanand has taken over the finances of the Hindu Mahasabha. and he is treating it has created a monopoly over it, and my views do not match with his views. Okay, so I might have to take a call whether to remain in the organization or to leave it altogether. Now comes 1934. 1934, you have got a communal award. The Congress, what does it do? Congress at its at a Pune session, I suppose, special session of the Congress. It's Pune or Nagpur, I don't remember. It resolves that the Congress will neither accept the communal reward nor reject the communal reward. Now, people like Madan Mohan Malviya, people like Jagat Rai Lal, they are very much pained that Congress should have taken a stand. It should have opposed the communal award because in fact, it strikes at the integrity, basic integrity of the Hindu society, of the Hindu community. Now, elections are to be held. In that context also, when these people are aggrieved with the Congress that Congress has not taken an unequivocal stand, he writes again a letter to Dr. B.S. Munjay. He says that Bhai Parmanand, who has been elected the president at the Ajmer session in 1933, he says that he has used very abusive words for the Congress. It was this time when we should have tried to garner the support of other congressmen who were sympathetic to our cause instead of alienating them. So by this diatribe, what is happening is that you are also alienating those Congress members who are also not in support of the communal award. He writes this letter to Dr. B.S. Munjay. So again, what is coming across? Coming across that political work, Congress, let us talk about Sangathan or constructive work or reform. That you can do in whatever body you may be. Maybe Hindu Mahasabha is coming of the view that it should be a political body. 34 elections, he fights on the ticket of Madan Mohan Malviya's Nationalist Congress Party. Okay. He loses the election. His deposit is Jamanat Jabt ho gayi unki. And his rival was Anugrah Narayan Singh, another prominent leader of the Congress, who was also his associate in the Congress. He writes in diaries that I thought at times of committing suicide. But somehow, then later, you had the Government of India Act, and then elections are coming near, 36, 37 elections. Now, there is a compromise between Madan Mohan Malviya's Congress Nationalist Party and Congress. Jawaharlal Nehru and Madan Mohan Malviya, they mediate. Now, after this compromise, Jagat Rai Lal rejoins technically the Congress once again. And he fights the election on the Congress ticket, 37 elections. Okay? And the irony is that his opponent was a Hindu Mahasabha candidate. And the Hindu Mahasabha candidate now loses his deposit against him. So this is his formal disassociation, technical disassociation with the Hindu Mahasabha. Okay, political disassociation with the Hindu Mahasabha. Now I will take you further beyond 37 also. I will talk about him as a constitutionalist. I will talk about the Jagat Narayan Lal Pakistan resolution. I will talk about his thoughts on labor and capital, which I am going to do now. Okay. So Jagat Narayan Lal was a very prolific writer. And being a professor of economics, a very well-read man, he was appointed as Parliamentary Secretary of Finance and Labor under Anugrah Narayan Singh. Anugrah Narayan Singh was the cabinet minister, and Parliamentary Secretary meant Minister of State. So finance and labor was with him. The industries were with him. So he writes in his diaries that through arbitration, I was able to solve many industrial problems. Now, I have gone across through his tracts on labor. He says I will be talking about labor now also, his thoughts on labor. Now, he writes, and all these things are written in jail. Again, he will be imprisoned during the individual satyagraha, 3 years imprisoned in the Quit India movement. Excuse me. He says, why should we talk about only the industrial labor? It appears as if we solve the problems of the industrial labor, all labor problems are solved. No, it is not like that. There is a vast multitude of labor which is not industrial. That is the agricultural labor, the landed labor and the landless labor. And then he says there is a very thin line of difference between the land owning labor and the landless labor. The land owning labor, he has got some land. The landless labor has no land, isn't it? And he says ki both of them, maybe the labor which has got some land, he might be able to produce something, but it might not be sufficient enough for his. It might not be sufficient for him to feed him and his family. And I was going through forward of a book. There was a book on agricultural labor. There was a movement, agricultural labor movement in Bihar. That book was published by Jagdivan Ram Social Institute in Bihar. So I was going through, and the forward was written by Jagat Rai Lal. And he says ki the landless labor, these are the people who during the times of bad monsoon, you will find them, they are the beggars who are begging at your homes. And if you probe it further, you'll find that they are landless laborers, most of them. Okay. Now, what does he say about the why are these issues there? Look, he says that basically the problem between the capital and the labor is because there is a difference in the condition of the labor and the capital. The capitalist, they roll in wealth. The labor lives in a very pitiable condition. In spite of all what he does, his family has to suffer. His family has to bear all the ordeals. And then he says, ki, so when the labor becomes organized, then what happens that revolutions may occur. The established governments may give way to other forms of governments, isn't it? Then he talks about the labor organization. He says that labor organization is a very important thing. It is happening in India also. And he says that in the industrialized countries of the West, like England, France, America, Germany, Italy, Australia, they have got a very strong labor movement, strong trade unions. Then he, of course, says, look, what the amazing interplay of socialism and the fascism, which has brought so much misery and ruin to the present world. He says, so the labor movement in Austria, Germany, and Italy, it has received a setback. And he's talking, this is Second World War. He's writing this tract during his Quit India days between 1942 to 1945, where he was incarcerated at Haribagh jail. So he's talking about that. Okay. Now, what are his views on the Marx surplus production? He says that from individuals, when surplus production happens and the stage moves from the individual production, the exploitation occurs. And that surplus is expropriated by the capitalists. So exploitation occurs. But then he again says that he says that he's not in conformity with the Marxist revolutions. And he's a nationalist. He says that there are many different ideologies, and many of the workers and the people who believe these ideologies, they are of the view that a drastic change may happen, a revolution may happen, whereas still the national cause has not been revived. We have not still become united. So these radical measures, we have to take a call that these radical measures may not be very much feasible for us at this point of time. So he's talking about this. So minus the revolution part, he is okay. He talks about Bolshevism, socialism. He talks about the bloodshed which has happened also. Then he says, what is the way out? He says, cooperate. He talks about cooperation between labor and capital. He says raising the standard of living. He talks about arbitration. He talks about better wages. And in his writings, there has a tract of John Gunther. He talks about the Swedish experiment, about the success of the cooperatives there, isn't it? But he says that in India it has been a failure, but more time needs to be given. So here streaks of Gandhism are visible in him. So this is what he's talking about labor. But one thing was very clear to him, that without solving the contradictions of labor and capital, it will become very difficult for a newly independent India, whenever it becomes independent, to become stable or get a strong footing. Now I will come to the Pakistan part, his thoughts. He is firmly in the Congress now. Okay. Quit India Cripps mission comes. In April, Cripps mission moves the proposal that there was an exit clause also, as you all must be knowing. that the Muslim majority, any province will have get an option to exit from the Indian Union. Now, C. Rajagopalachari, who was the premier of Madras, Chakravarti Rajagopalachari, he gave his famous Madras resolution, and he brings this resolution to a special session of the Indian National Congress, which was convened on 7th May at Allahabad, 7th May 1942. His proposal is that let us cooperate with the Muslim League in forming a national government, and post-war there can be an exit option for the provinces. But as you know, that fifth mission was rejected. The Congress rejected because that it is not promising the dominion now, and secondly that it is not talking about the integral unity of India. And the Muslim League also had problems, as you know, that it doesn't conform to the exact exit of Muslim majority provinces, isn't it? Jagat Narayan Lal, he moves a resolution counterpoising against Rajagopalachari's resolution. And when Rajagopalachari's resolution was moved, there was great discontent within the Congress, led by Nehru and others. So Rajagopalachari's initial resolution was rejected by, I think, 117 to 15 votes or something. Then a positive resolution of Jagat Narayan Lal, which is famous as Jagat Narayan Lal resolution, it was proposed that the integrity and unity of India cannot be compromised, and no province can be given the exit option, because it will be tantamount to injuring the basic fabric of India. This proposal was passed, 92 votes in favor and 15 votes in against. Chakravarti Rajagopalachari resigned from the Congress after this episode. And thereafter, in Quit India movement starts. Jagat Narayan Lal goes underground. He hadn't gone to Bombay, but all the leaders who returned were returning to Bihar from Bombay, including Rajendra Prasad, they were arrested at the Patna station. He becomes active underground, and a reward of Jinda ya Murda, dead or alive, is given on him. And ultimately, he was escaping on the river, where there was a false case of a Canadian couple who was murdered. That was a false case. So he was caught by the CID in the midst of the river. He had not eaten for 2 days, and he was in the villager of Nitish Kumar's, present Chief Minister's village, Kalyan Viga. He had remained since 2012, when it was 75 years of Quit India movement, that Jagat Babu had not eaten for 2 days. So he was caught in the midst of the river Punpun, again sent to Hazaribagh jail. Hazaribagh jail was a favorite place for him, and 3 years jail sentence. It was in jail that in 1943, maybe March or April, Rajagopalachari meets Mahatma Gandhi at Pune jail. Again, he gives his proposal, Madras proposal. Now Gandhiji is becoming a little, this proposal becoming acceptable to him. Then Rajagopalachari meets Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Then Rajagopalachari goes and meets Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Okay. And he says, this is the proposal, and Gandhiji is acceptable to this proposal, that national government, and there can be an option for the exit of Muslim provinces. When the news comes to Jagat Narayan Lal, in his tract there is several volumes which has written as his Pakistan diaries, which he might have thought of being published. Those manuscripts are there. So he says, I along with my colleagues who were at the higher, we were shocked. All of us has opposed that in 1942 at the Allahabad session. Now what has happened? And then he says, Mahatma, because everybody is in jail, there is no way he can understand our sensibilities and our feelings. So what I pray to God, that good sense should prevail. And then he says, he quotes Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. He says that a doctor, he is reading the Ambedkar's book, Pakistan or the Partition of India. He says the doctor has said it very clearly, that once partition happens, it cannot be taken away. So his warning also, it is not something which has to be toyed with. And ultimately, as you know, so these things pained him. Okay. Now he is is elected to the Constituent Assembly in 1946. I will come now to uh, his activities in the Constituent Assembly. Okay. Now he is member of the Congress. But Hindu sensibilities are there in the Constituent Assembly. It will be apparent. I'll be talking about it. So he becomes one of the 36 members from Bihar in the Constituent Assembly. Now, first of all, I will talk about something which is related to your area. Dar Commission was appointed by the Constituent Assembly. Dar Commission was appointed in, I think, July 1948. Dar Commission is the Linguistic Provinces Commission. It was headed by Justice Dar, retired High Court Chief Justice of Allahabad High Court. There were 4 members in it. Justice Dar, Jagat Narayan Lal, K.M. Munshi, and there was one more member. I don't remember right now. Why was it this committee formed? This committee was formed to look into the formation of states of Kerala, Karnataka, Andhra to be separated from Madras. The demand was there. Then from Maharashtra, Gujarat, then from central provinces. Okay. So, and Bihar, how to separate them. So they extensively toured the country and these areas. This report was published on 10th, submitted to the Constituent Assembly on 10th December. I am audible to you all? Hello? My voice is clear now?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Yes, clear.
Okay. So this report is submitted, Dar Commission report. Dar Commission says, look, it is a newly independent India, and forming states on the linguistic basis, it may give rise to sub-nationalism, which is not good for the country. Then he says the commission notes that when we toured these areas, the tallest people, the tallest leaders, they were talking so much about the language and the culture. So Dar Commission was unanimous. It said that linguistic reorganization is not in the interest of the country right now. At a later date, on provincial, when the time comes, when stability is there, then maybe the central government, then it can talk about it. And as it, in 1955, the states were reorganized. Okay. So Dar Commission's recommendations were this. They didn't recommend the formation of these on the linguistic base, but it was not against it. JNL and other members not against it. They said that language should be an important factor, but this is not the right time. When the time comes, maybe the administrative factors, the language factors, all should be taken into account. Now, when your constitution was being debated in 1949 November, so he also speaks. These are in the Constitutional Assembly debates. He says, look, there's a lot of debate that it is a unitary constitution. Somebody says that it is a federal constitution. He says it is both a unitary constitution, unitary and a federal constitution. Then he says, so there has to be a strong center, because time and again, India has been witness to the fact that because of a weak center, India has been the area of invasions, and because it has been weak. So he talks about that there should be a strong federal government, there should be federation, and there should also be a strong central government. Okay. Now, what were his views? So look, there are nationalists, Hindu nationalists. Okay. So those streaks are there. Now, but here when I talking about federation, so what we find that he is a constitutionalist, isn't it? So now, the basic constitutional fabric of India, they are building the nation. How a newly independent India will take its place in the League of Nations, isn't it? So then, to some more aspects, I'll talk about the free press. There was a debate, and I will give you some particulars about the debate. I think that debate was on 1 September 1949, and the article which was being debated, it was Article 13, freedom of speech and expression, and the proposal was regarding the proposal to tax the press. Deshbandhu Gupta and Raj Bhargav, they were of the view that taxation would muzzle the independence of press. On the other hand, Dr. Ambedkar, Alladi Krishna Swami Iyer, R.K. Sidhwa, they were of the view that press should not be immune from ordinary liabilities incidental to citizenship. Now, Jagadhara Lal, what does he say? He intervenes. He says that law of sedition, as our politicians know, is as perverse as it is embracing. He was arrested for 1 year during Mahavir sedition case when he had written an article there. Then he says that taxation, in a way, it will muzzle the press. Then he gives a historical example that in 1712, the parliament, that he is referring to the Hansard debate. He said that the parliament, on the request of Queen Anne, passed the proposal to tax the press. And said that for 100 years a struggle was waged in England, and in fact it also led to the American Revolution when in 1765 the Stamp Act was introduced. Then he says to presume that so many wise people, they were agitating for such a long period that it was just a matter of taxation. It is not like that. So he talks about he's against taxation of press. But again, when we talk about press rights, so there was another debate on 19th May 1949, Article 85. Each dealt with the privileges and immunities published by the press about members, their deliberation in parliament. Look, a member of parliament has immunities when he speaks something. That immunity is there. Now, Naziruddin Ahmed from Bihar, he was of the view that press, anything which a member speaks should be published in the press without any prior approval of the parliament. Now, clause 2 of Article 35, the provision was that if a member's intervention or his deliberations are to be published in the press outside, the parliament has to give approval. Naziruddin Ahmed was saying that it is against press. But Jagat Lal argued that this is not about, that may be about the freedom of the press, but it is not about the privileges of the members. Then he says, suppose a member, just for abusing somebody, just for creating trouble, and not for the purpose of a healthy debate, he talks about a number of things just for the sole purpose that he gets published. So that will be contrary to the basic immunities which have been given to him. So regarding the press freedom, Article 13, he says he is against taxation, and he is against Naziruddin Ahmed's proposal that a member ought to have a right to get published any tract which he speaks in the parliament. Now look, two very important issues. One issue is about the right to religious propagation, and then there is this debate about the secularism in the Indian parliament. Okay. Now about the secularism debate in the Constituent Assembly. November 1949, an amendment 4 to Article 35 of Government of India Act was moved. And I think it was K.M. Munshi, Purushottam Das Tandon, etc. Jagat Lal also intervened. Now, a number of people in the Constituent Assembly, they said that the word secular should not have come into the Constitution. They were of the view that as it has got its connotation, basically the Constitution meant that the state should not favor any religion. But considering the Indian culture and the religious tradition, how can you disassociate religion from the basic culture of India? Of course, the state should not have to do with any religion. So they said that the idea, putting the word secular was not necessary. So Jagat Lal also with the same view. He says it would have been enough if it would have been said that the state should have a spiritual and a moral outlook, instead of saying that it should be secular. Okay, he's of this view. Then again, there are very important debate that is on 1 May 1947. Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, he moved an amendment. He proposed that the right to, clause 13, that right to freely profess and propagate a religion should be there, should be allowed, but it should be subject to public order and morality. Now, Vallabhai's amendment, it was supported by K.M. Munshi. Jagat Rai also supported it. He said that nowhere in anywhere in any constitution of the world, the right to propagate has been given unfettered. So there has to be cases of issues of public morality, ethics, and not causing injury to the other community. Now, basically, as a Hindu, his sensibilities were there that Hinduism is not a proselytizing religion, and he had witnessed as member of the active member of the Hindu Samaj in his early days. He had witnessed the conversions, particularly the Christian conversions in Chota Nagpur, the present Jharkhand, etc., where a number of factors were underplay, where the organization network was also there. So he is of the view, basically at the backdrop, is that the Hindu, if such an unfettered right will be given, Hinduism will be at a at a weak spot, or you can say it will not would be correct. So Jagat Narayan Lal, I'm coming to an end, and he after independence he became the deputy speaker of Bihar Assembly. He became minister of cooperatives. He was actively involved in social service, and he remained very active in social service. There is a constituent college in Patna, Jagat Narayan Lal College, which he had founded during the non-cooperation movement. He donated 7.5 acres of his land. So he died on 3rd of December 1966. And it is also a coincidence, the 3rd December is the day which is birthday of Rajendra Prasad. And Jagat Narayan Lal was, the mentor of Jagat Narayan Lal was Dr. Rajendra Prasad. So thank you so much. I think that I have exceeded my time limit. This is what I wanted to discuss with you. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir, for your specified interpretation of Indian nationalism through the life journey of Jagat Narayan Lal, an influential figure in the making of modern Bihar. Now the webinar is open for discussion. Is there any questions?
Hello,
Yes.
I'm Professor Ravi Prakash from Chaudhary Bansila University, Bhiwani, Haryana. Professor Manish ji, it was a wonderful lecture on Hindu Mahasabha and Congress, because present day scenario, it is very relevant. I wanted to know that what was the relationship between the Congress, Hindu Mahasabha, and Dr. Rajendra Prasad also, because Dr. Rajendra Prasad, few references are there when he was also very close to Hindu Mahasabha.
Yes. So Ravi ji, I've already discussed that at Gaya Congress he was the chairman of the reception committee. Then in 1923 at the Banaras Hindu Mahasabha session, he became the member of the executive committee. So he was associated in different ways with the Hindu Mahasabha, and when you read his autobiography, Hindu sensibilities are there. But in 1946, when his autobiography is published, so he refers to the Gaya Congress. When you go through it, you will find that he defends himself, that I was the chairman of the reception committee. But he says that at that point of time, Hindu Mahasabha was not the body which is being perceived today. As we know that after 37, the Hindu Mahasabha presidentship was assumed by Vinayak Damodar Savarkar. And it was also the phase when Muslim League politics are becoming very radical. So there is a different ideological phase of the Hindu Mahasabha, which begins after 1937, where you have Savarkar, then you have got Shyama Prasad Mukherjee. Okay. So Rajendra Babu had his Hindu sensibility. That is what I am trying to talk about. That just understanding nationalism in the context of two binaries, communalism and secularism, is not enough. Because there cannot be only two compartments. So dynamic, so it was encompassing so many things. It was evolving. it was also to be made also. So there were different nationalisms there. There was Muslim nationalism also, Hindu nationalism also. So there has to be scope for understanding those sensibilities. So unless until we do it, instead of just compartmentalizing it, so we are not understanding carefully the dynamics of the Indian national Muslim movement. And that is what I believe, that is why the contradictions have remained, because debates have not been carried across these issues also. We have in fact ignored them, or we have preferred not to discuss these delicate issues. This is what I feel.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Manish ji, congratulations for giving a wonderful lecture.
Thank you.
Can you tell me when this Hindu Mahasabha was separated from Congress? Or differences?
1938. 1938.
1938, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, Subhash Chandra Bose was the president. I mentioned it, that a resolution was passed that no member of the Hindu Mahasabha can become an office bearer, no member of Hindu Mahasabha or Muslim League. They could become a member of Hindu Mahasabha of the Congress. You know, because 37 Savarkar assumes the presidentship of Hindu Mahasabha. So that ambivalence is not there. And even in his first presidential address at Ahmedabad, 1937, he says that he exhorts the Hindus not to vote for the Congress. He says that any Hindu, however Hindu sensibility he might have, the moment he enters the Congress, so he will not speak about the Hindu interest. So don't vote for them, for the Hindus who stand on the Congress ticket, because that is treachery on the part of them. So Hindu Mahasabha assumes a radical line. So separation was inevitable also. Now there is no ambiguity about it. You get my point? Basically, and the another issue was that these people who were associated with the Hindu Mahasabha, they also had these issues that look, Hindu interests can be done in a apolitical way. The interest of the community. Jagat Anala was one of them. Political interests, the Congress is the only party which is capable of delivering Swaraj. So this was very important. Okay. These people who separated from the Hindu Mahasabha, they understood that the Hindu Mahasabha is not the body, not the organized, neither the strength, which can lead the anti-colonial struggle successfully or to its logical end. Of course, they were having, I will not say that Jagat Anandlal, after separating from the Hindu Mahasabha, he lost his Hindu sensibilities. He didn't lose. He was concerned about the community. Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. But in spite of that, sir, they conducted their conventions along with the Indian National Congress annual sessions, sir. Because
Yes,
I
yes.
got annual register of Indian National Congress. So in that they mentioned in each and every conferences they conducted these Hindu Mahasabha conferences and Muslim League also, sir.
And Khilafat Conference also. 1922 Gaya Congress. Gaya Congress Khilafat Conference was also held. I think that RA Mahila Samaj Conference was also held. Isn't it? I think even the Marxist, I don't know. I don't remember, but there is a tract by M.N. Rai. M.N. Rai was very closely watching Gaya Congress because Chitranjan Das was talking about property rights and all those things. So number of us, because that is the point which I am making. Na? We cannot contextualize the things we are compartmentalizing today. Because there was no perceived differences. They were allowed to do. There was no such compartments. Hindu Mahasabha is holding its session. In fact, the Hindu Mahasabha at Gaya Congress passed its resolution that we are going to be apolitical. We are not going to be biased against any party. So there was no harm in it. Even Muslim members of the Khilafat Congress, they used to attend the Hindu Mahasabha Adhiveshans. So that is what I am trying to tell na, that ideology is not something which is static. Ideology changes according to circumstances. And when we talk about Indian nationalism, it is difficult to understand in the context of only two binaries. We have to understand it in at each and every stage, the sensibilities of their actors. Then only we understand its truer dynamics and its complexities and its conflicted nature. Indian nationalism was conflicted. So we should not ignore it. As historians, our job is to reveal. Our job is not to conceal. That is what I believe in.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sir, my question is how your status as the grandson of Jagat Narayan Lalji influenced your studies. Have you had any privilege in access to the sources on him?
I, being associated with him, definitely a lot of talk about him. My mother is his youngest daughter. So, as a historian, I had to research. So there was an interest what to do, and gradually I got some family papers. Then, as I then I accessed his private collections there. So that has been a long journey. So definitely one becomes emotional also, but now I don't become so much emotional. But the basic thing is that it is revealing. Matlab, I didn't realize that he played his role in the national movement. He was an important figure, in fact. So this is I realized as I was working on him.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Any other questions?
Look, just a minute. I will show you his.
Have you had any privilege in access to the sources on him?
I, being associated with him, definitely a lot of talk about him. My mother is his youngest daughter. So, as a historian, I had to research. So there was an interest what to do, and gradually I got some family papers. Then, as I accessed his private collections there. So that has been a long journey. So definitely one becomes emotional also, but now I don't become so much emotional. But the basic thing is that it is revealing. Matlab, I didn't realize that he played his role in the national movement. He was an important figure, in fact. So this is I realized as I was working on him.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.